It was supposed to be just another afternoon at the local bank. A young black woman, dressed simply but confidently, walked in to handle some paperwork. She didn't stand out, at least, not until the whispers began. The teller at the counter looked her up and down, smirked, and asked if she was sure she was in the right place. Patrons glanced over, sensing tension. Some laughed quietly. Others just stared. She stayed calm, her eyes steady, her voice low but firm. What happened next left everyone frozen, because that same woman, the one being mocked, wasn't there to make a deposit. She was there to check on her own business. And when she finally spoke the truth, the entire bank went silent. Before that unforgettable moment, her life had been anything but easy. Her name was Alyssa James, a self-made entrepreneur who built everything from scratch. Raised in a modest neighborhood by a single mother, Alyssa had known struggle long before success. She remembered nights when the lights went out because they couldn't pay the bills, and days when her mother skipped meals just to make sure Alyssa had enough. As she grew up, Alyssa became fascinated by business. How money moved, how decisions shaped lives, and how power often belonged to those who looked nothing like her. She studied tirelessly, often the only black student in her finance classes, constantly underestimated by her peers. Professors praised her intelligence, but others mocked her confidence, calling her too ambitious. When she finally graduated, she didn't chase big city dreams. Instead, she went back home, to the same struggling neighborhood, and opened a small community bank. Her mission was simple: to give people like her mother a fair chance at financial stability. The process was brutal: loan denials, rejections, and countless closed doors. But she refused to give up. Slowly, brick by brick, she built something real, a bank for the people, run with honesty and respect. Years later, her success had quietly grown. But even now, she lived modestly. No designer clothes, no luxury cars, just quiet pride and purpose. And on that winter afternoon, when she walked into a nearby branch under her company's name, she wasn't looking for attention. She was there for a simple audit, to meet with staff under her own network. But to everyone else in that bank, she looked like just another customer. That's when it began, the kind of subtle racism that doesn't always scream, but whispers in cutting tones. Alyssa stood in line, holding a slim folder, documents outlining her ownership, her signatures, and the institution's details. She had done this dozens of times before. Yet somehow, every time she walked into a new branch, she felt the weight of judgment before she even spoke. The teller at the counter, an older white woman named Nancy, wore a polished smile, the kind that hides arrogance behind courtesy. When Alyssa approached, Nancy didn't greet her with respect. Instead, she tilted her head, scanning her from head to toe. "Business accounts are handled in our executive area," she said slowly, as if speaking to someone who wouldn't understand. Alyssa smiled politely. "That's fine. I'm here about one of them." Nancy frowned. "Do you mean your employer's account?" The tone hit harder than expected. Alyssa paused but stayed calm. "Actually, it's mine," she said gently. Nancy let out a short laugh. "Yours? Oh, honey, those accounts aren't for personal use. You'll want the regular checking window over there." A few customers in line looked up, smirking. One man whispered, "Classic." Another shook his head, muttering, "She probably thinks she owns the place." Alyssa's chest tightened, but she refused to react. She'd faced worse. Still, as Nancy motioned dismissively toward the standard line, something inside her shifted. Years of hard work, late nights, sacrifices, all dismissed in seconds by someone who saw only her skin color. She calmly placed a folder on the counter. "Please review this," she said. Nancy hesitated, her smirk fading just slightly. She opened the folder and began flipping through the pages. Each document carried Alyssa's name. Each signature was hers. A few seconds passed before confusion crept into Nancy's eyes. "These are official records," she murmured. "Where did you get these?" Alyssa met her gaze steadily. "I didn't get them. I signed them." Now, The murmurs began spreading through the lobby. Nancy's voice trembled slightly. "Wait, you're saying you—" "Yes," Alyssa said softly. "I'm the majority owner of this bank and its regional branches, including this one." The air in the room shifted. You could almost hear the silence. The manager appeared from his office, clearly alerted by the tension. He approached, still oblivious to the situation. "Is there a problem here?" he asked Nancy. Nancy stammered. She claims she owns the bank." The manager looked at Alyssa, his expression skeptical. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to verify that." Without saying a word, Alyssa handed him her ID, company registration, and documentation. The papers bore the seal and her signature as chief executive officer. As he scanned the files, the color drained from his face. The room was so quiet that even the soft hum of the ATM machine seemed loud. Every customer was now watching. The laughter was gone. The whispers had stopped. The manager finally exhaled. "Ms. James, my apologies. We weren't aware of your visit." Nancy stood frozen, her eyes darting between Alyssa and the paperwork. She wanted to speak, but words failed her. Alyssa didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She simply smiled, a calm, knowing smile that carried both grace and power, because she didn't need revenge. The truth had already done its work. As the realization settled across the room, the shift was almost cinematic. The same teller who had mocked her now looked pale and speechless. Alyssa remained composed, her voice steady. "I came here today to conduct an internal audit," she said quietly. "But it seems I've learned something else instead." Her words weren't angry. They were powerful. The manager nodded nervously, promising to take care of the misunderstanding. But Alyssa wasn't done. She knew this wasn't just about her. It was about every person who'd been made to feel small for simply existing in a space that others thought they didn't belong in. She looked around the room, the customers, the employees, the silent witnesses. "You know," she said softly, "it's easy to assume what people are based on how they look. I've seen it all my life. But sometimes, the person you're looking down on might just be the one signing your paycheck." The words hung in the air, firm yet compassionate. No yelling, no scenes, just truth, simple and undeniable. Nancy's hands trembled as she tried to apologize. Alyssa stopped her gently. "You don't owe me an apology," she said. "Just remember what respect looks like." The entire room seemed frozen in that moment. Even those who had laughed earlier now looked away ashamed. Alyssa collected her papers, nodded politely to the staff, and turned to leave. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor, a rhythm of quiet triumph. But just before she reached the door, she paused, looking back one last time. "Next time someone walks in," she said, "treat them like they belong, because they might own more than you think." And with that, she stepped outside into the cold afternoon air. Inside, no one spoke for several minutes. The teller sat motionless, the manager still holding the paperwork like proof of a lesson he wouldn't forget. In that silence, something had changed, not just in the room, but in every person who witnessed it. News of the encounter spread quietly through the community. Some customers later shared what they saw, how a simple act of arrogance had turned into a moment of truth. For Alyssa, it wasn't about humiliation or revenge. It was about dignity, about proving that real power doesn't need to shout. It just stands tall and lets truth do the talking. Days later, Nancy submitted a written apology, not because she was told to, but because the guilt lingered. The bank branch underwent a new diversity training initiative, one that Alyssa personally approved, emphasizing empathy, equality, and understanding. But beyond that institution, the story reached thousands online. People called her an inspiration, a symbol of quiet resilience in the face of ignorance. Yet Alyssa didn't see herself that way. She often said, "I didn't want to prove them wrong. I just wanted to remind them what right looks like." Her mother, watching the viral story unfold, smiled through tears. All those years of struggle, all those nights of sacrifice, it had come full circle. Alyssa had not only built a bank, she had built a legacy. And on that cold winter day, she didn't just teach a lesson about ownership. She showed the world what respect truly means. The story reminds us, sometimes racism doesn't come with hate, it comes with assumptions. And breaking those assumptions doesn't always require anger, just truth, courage, and grace. Because real strength isn't about proving your worth to others. It's about knowing it yourself. If this story moved you, share it. Because stories like Alyssa's aren't just entertainment, they're reminders. Reminders that equality begins with everyday actions and how we choose to see each other. Don't let our message fade. Like, comment, and subscribe. Not just to support stories like this, but to keep conversations about respect, race, and humanity alive.